Another week, another blowout win for this Wisconsin team that's all of a sudden finding its groove. How confident are we in each game remaining for the rest of the season? I'm Rajeev. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective. Woo-hoo! Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the Badgers had another stellar week. This time, the utter beatdown of Greg Schiano and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. We get into the game and talk about our improving and all of a sudden really good quarterback, Braedyn Locke. We are halfway through the season, on schedule for our win total, and have outscored our last two opponents 94-13. How confident are we in each remaining game? We'll do confidence ratings for each of the games. Justin, what a freaking 2 weeks we've had. By the way, I love it when all our teams win. I know we have Bears fans in here. Obviously, we have Packer fans, which I'm going to get to, but Bears fans, Colts fan. Well, I'm the Colts fan, but I mean, hey, what a good day. And of course,
one other one.
Many of you are Packers fans. You're looking back. You're back to looking good. It's really nice when we just get victories. An absolute thrashing of Rutgers 42-7. Justin, how you feeling, man? Like, I just feel like I'm excited. I'm just like, it's so fun right now.
So here's what I'm going to say, Rajeev. Who told you not to worry about this game?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Who told you not to worry?
Listen, I will say.
Schiano's a good coach. We got to worry about. Boom.
Dude, how many times? Okay, but to be fair, everyone who said that we were going to blow also said we were going to beat Northwestern last year. Said we are going to beat Indiana last year. Shit happens. Shit just happens. I think it's great that we blew them out. Obviously, I'm very happy about that. I think that Rutgers played horribly, but we played really well. We've taken big steps. Like, I think and we're going to get into that a lot today because I just feel like there's so much to unpack about that game that was just amazing. Thank you to all of you that are joining us. We're at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I appreciate everyone coming in here once again for our Sunday shows. It's always fun when we get a victory. We'll start here, Justin. We're going to go through some superlatives today. We're also going to do our confidence ratings for the rest of the season. But let's just start from the big picture and then go in. Big picture takeaways, big picture as far as where we are right now and how good we're looking.
Yeah, big picture, it looks like we have an offense.
Yeah.
Quarterback, Braedyn Locke starting to settle in and is making plays. Like we were worried about him being a game manager. It looks like he can be more than that. I think that he's capable of making some throws. I still question whether he can do it against a top-tier opponent. We'll wait and see on that. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean a team with legitimate NFL type, both on the defensive side is just stacked. We're talking Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State to a point. I think Penn State's normally more so in the front seven than the defensive backfield. But in any case, we'll see what he can be at those. But I think that he's going to be likely the best quarterback on the field in every game that is not Oregon or Penn State remaining. I don't think that's not a huge thing to say out there. Like, these teams are pretty weak, the remaining other 3-4 teams. So there's a pretty good chance he's gonna be a plus player for us the rest of the year. And Tawee Walker was not expecting a 200-yard rushing game out of him.
Sadly, it was just 2 yards short. Didn't need to be. Yeah. Just give him one more carry.
He's getting it. I'm rounding up.
Yeah, he's rounding up. We're rounding.
Missed a couple of yards. We'll take this couple of feet that weren't necessarily counted into that total, and we'll just add it on.
Look, I think big picture for me is that this sets up a really nice run for us. We talked about being 5-2. We have Northwestern left to get to that point. We said we'd learn a lot from this game, and we did. We learned a lot. And I think we learned that Braedyn Locke can be a dude for this team, and we're going to talk a lot about him. But let's talk about the game in general a little bit. Let's put up some stats. There were some interesting stats in this game that were really quite fun to look at. We did lose the turnover margin, sadly, but Rushing yards per carry, we were at 6.8, and they were only at 4.8. The other things I'll just quickly point out, you brought it up on the reaction show yesterday.
They were at 4.8 because of the fact their quarterback ran for them.
Fair, but it's still there.
It is.
7 of 14 on third down. We had 551 yards to their 271, and our passing yards per attempt, 8.6 to their 3.2. I mean, Justin, tell me what jumps off the page here at you.
Number one, time of possession. For all the hand-wringing that is done by our fan base about we're bringing in the air raid, we're not going to win time possession, and the defense is going to get tired. Listen, the defense gets tired when the defense doesn't get off the field. That's when the defense gets tired. When they get 3 and outs and they keep putting the offense back out there, they're fine. You can argue that there's more opportunities for them to be on the field, but if you have a good defense, they're not going to get run down. Like, they're just going to, if you think about it, if they have 3 straight 3 and outs, that's like defending one drive. So, I mean, they should be able to hold up for that. But what I will say, yeah, it's that. And honestly, the pass defense against them. Now, they were aided by a quarterback that's just not a college quarterback.
But still, 3.2 yards a carry is still incredible.
It is. Like, that's what's poor, 5? That's not average, because I would say average is probably a little over 6.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're 5 or less, then you're just putrid.
I mean, really, you want to be 7 at least, right? I mean, I think that's where you really, that's where it starts getting good. But yeah,
7 is where you start looking at it that you were a plus in the passing game. You were effective.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things to talk about in this game. And yeah, so the one thing that jumped off the page for me there is that, I mean, the 8.6 yards per attempt, and it's Braedyn Locke. I mean, I think that Braedyn Locke, man, let's talk about him. Like I rewatched most of it, all the highlights, and then most of the game. Man, Justin, I got to tell you, I feel like he's turning into a good quarterback. Like, it's not just that he's improving. I mean, he has things that I didn't think he had. Like, he had bit some balls. There was a beautiful ball when we were up 7-0. He threw into Tucker Ashcraft near the goal. It was like around the 10-yard line. Just
that was a ball.
Yeah, obviously, the two deep balls.
That was a myth throw.
Yeah, the two deep balls to Vinny Anthony were absolutely fantastic, like just on a freaking dime. And it's nice when you watch it a second time, because sometimes when you're watching the game, you're all hyped up on everything. And the touchdown pass to Pauling in the corner is a little bit underthrown, but it was, I mean, obviously Pauling made a great play on that, but that was also a good throw. There were so many dimes, frankly, that he just threw. And the more and more I watch Braedyn Locke and the pocket presence, we talked about it on the reaction show too. He steps up in the pocket. By the way, Longo's did a really good job with this too. They're moving the pocket a little more. There's definitely a lot more. They're making him comfortable, but man, he has got to stand in there and make these throws. And Justin, he's making them. We talked about a hard cap ceiling on this guy. I'm just going to be optimistic and say, I think we were a little low on him, even as far as his ceiling could be. This guy could be a seriously good quarterback in this league. And I know it's 2 games, but I just feel like you're seeing things there that we didn't see last year, that we didn't see, obviously, in the Alabama game and the USC game. But it's really right. The confidence is everything with this guy. And man, I tell you, I feel like he's becoming a good quarterback.
Yeah, I like I said, I think he can be a plus quarterback in this league. And like I said, you think about it, I've literally said that he's got 4 teams that he's going to be the better player on the field than in our remaining schedule. I mean, after watching Dylan Gabriel against Ohio State, I don't think anyone can argue that.
I mean, obviously.
I will take away from that game, just to be real quick, I think the difference that you see is that you see how dynamic the receivers look when you have a quarterback capable of making big-time throws. Gabriel really attacked downfield in that game, and they didn't get quite as much from Howard at Ohio State. And I think that was the difference. Wisconsin, we're seeing the difference between what Tyler Van Dyke was and what Braedyn Locke is. Some people, I've seen a few people mention that they didn't think that Van Dyke could be this, and I think people are underrating how big of a deal it is to have somebody that has a full year in the system under their belt. I don't think you are going to see a lot of plays like this until the end of the season with Van Dyke, simply because he just probably wouldn't have the comfort level. Braedyn's been running it for a really long time now in practice, and he's probably very comfortable with his reads. And I think you see that with him making checks and then making plays when he sees the coverage that he wants. So I think he's capable of having some big games like this. And I actually think that there's a pretty good chance that he can be dynamic enough as a passer if the run game isn't working, that he can make some things happen. Because I think we saw that against Rutgers.
Yeah.
He took some shots when he saw the coverage that he wanted.
Yeah, and I will say we got to give credit to Phil Longo as well. I mean, remember 2 weeks ago, we were saying, can we just get this guy to throw the ball downfield? And then all of a sudden in the USC game, he did. And ever since then, he has been, and it's working. It's really working because Locke can make those throws. And I'm not saying they're perfect all the time, but I'll tell you, I mean, when you look at the balls to Vinny Anthony that he's thrown, it's unbelievable. I mean, he's literally putting them on the spot, and it's amazing to see. But it's all of those pieces working well together. Like, I'm so impressed with Locke. I think he had an absolutely fantastic day. As far as the other offensive players, we'll put up a graphic here, just kind of talk through the involvement and the carries and the targets and such. Obviously, Justin, we talked about it yesterday. Tawee, fantastic game, 198 yards. Darrion Dupree, 2.6 yards a carry. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then the targets on the receiving core, Pauling had 6 targets, 4 catches. Trech had 5 targets, 4 receptions, 39 yards. Obviously, Vinny Anthony, 4 targets, but 2 huge plays. Another thing I put up on this chart here is the yards after catch. Trech 19, Darrion 22 on his 2 catches, 20 yards. He had 22 yards of yards after the catch too. So it's really, really nice to see the guys are actually, when you put a guy like Darrion Dupree in space, you can see what happens. But I mean, a good day overall, Justin, for the entire skill position core. Darrion Dupree is the only guy that didn't have a greatest day. I know we talked about the blocking wasn't always good for him, but yeah, Craig Yakimelli obviously just needs more carries. I think that's everyone pretty much agrees.
Yeah,
with
I don't think anyone can argue that at this point.
And I just think Trech Trech is doing things that we expected him to do first and foremost, of course, but he looks like such an incredible athlete out there, and he's doing things that I didn't really even expect him to do right away. Like when he started getting into the lineup and doing these things, like the way he separates, the way that he, obviously his hands, I mean, he's made some amazing catches so far. And that very quick burst that he has, especially when he's in a tight coverage, he can burst away from it and get open very easily. And it's showing, because every time they throw the ball to him, he's open, like every single time. That's not a coincidence, Justin. That's what it is. Give me your thoughts on all the skill position players yesterday.
Obviously, Vinny Anthony had a huge day. I think he's, in terms of our outside guys, clearly the best one we have. I don't think it's particularly close. Ryan was asking whether we thought that he was our best receiver. I think if push comes to shove and I need a play, I'm throwing it to Trech. I just trust him to make something happen more than Vinny at this point. Now, Vinny is much more of a shock play guy, where you can, if you're trying to get a big gainer against the defense. Clearly a guy averaging 40 yards a catch yesterday, that tells a story on that. But no, I think there's some really good things. We talked about Dupree on Ryan's podcast yesterday. I just think that it's gonna be a learning experience for him. Yak definitely needs to get more reps. He's been productive every time he's set foot on the field. Now, I will say, I don't think he's going to be an 18-yard per carry guy when he's doing it earlier in the game, but I still think that he's proven that he can gash some runs. I think even the tight ends in this game have been more productive this season in general, which is an underlying thing that nobody's really paying attention to. I think we're already almost up to the number of catches that the tight end group had last year. Probably going to be in the mid-20s or right around 30 for the group as a whole, which nobody's really a go-to guy out of that group. That's not shocking. But the passing game is going to continue to be, it might take off even more. If we have games where we're not running the ball well, like against Iowa or something like that, I could see us throwing for 350 in that game because we have to. But I could definitely see something like that happening if we're not able to run the football. But I think this offensive line, like I said, my player of the game, this offensive line was great yesterday, and that's the engine that makes this offense go right now.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about that. The offensive line is amazing. Quick question, and I'm not saying I feel this way. I don't have any issue with it because I think he's a freshman. But all right, let's talk about Darrion Dupree's yards per carry. Is that a concern for you at all?
Not really. I think it would be if we had to lean on him for an entire game. I don't think he's a guy that's ready for 20 or 20 carries. It will happen. He's going to have a run here where sooner or later that gash. I mean, we had Jones play yesterday. He averaged 1.8. You know, sometimes they just hit one when they get the right hole. I would like to see him use more on the edges. I think it's kind of stupid to run him into the pile. I don't think he has the strength for that yet. And I think that's my biggest takeaway when you look. There were a lot of runs where Tawee got hit early yesterday, where he just bowled through it and ended up picking up 3-4 more yards. Dupree can't do that yet. He's not that level of strong yet. He'll get there, but he's a true freshman that has one summer in the weight room. Like, he hasn't even had a full spring to get himself up to it. So he's going to get a lot stronger. He's just not there yet. And that's going to be, for both of those backs, the huge thing going into next year. They're going to probably be up 5 pounds in flat muscle next year. And they're going to reshape their bodies a little bit, and it's going to make a big difference. Now, Yakameli and Tawee are there already.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, Walker is running so hard yesterday. He just ran amazing. And I agree with you in the sense that, like, it seems like what they're doing is they're putting Dupree in there to get the second, team carries, but they're not necessarily putting out a package for him. He's running the same plays that they're running for Walker, which I think is a problem. And it's kind of what you're referring to. And I do want I want Longo to get a little bit more creative with Dupree itself. But listen, I'm not going to complain about anything offensively right now, except that I want him to keep getting out there. Let's get some comments from the community here. Will Hannah, always like this one. Tonight's meal: Philly cheesesteak, garlic parmesan fries, and washing it down with some Bumble Bear. Okay. Zach Bart, 601 pass yards in the last 2 games, 539 rushing yards, 4 total touchdown passes, 9 rushing touchdowns. Do we continue this at Northwestern? We're going to get into the Northwestern game later, but yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff there. Matchy says we were always too talented to be 5-7. Matthew Anderson said Locke had a ridiculous schedule to start his career. I think that was a huge factor. That's absolutely. I mean, remember, he came into Iowa, came into Alabama, played Ohio State. Like, that's tough.
We said that when part of the reason I said that I thought he had upside coming into this game against Rutgers, when people were saying that they thought it was comparable, him and Kaliakmanis, and I'm like, he's played nothing but good teams the entire time. Like, it's really hard to come in and have that be the start to your college career. You don't have that when you're, Kaliakmanis, who's played a bunch of garbage teams and wasn't particularly good in those games. So you're seeing it with Locke now that he doesn't have to be perfect. He's got teams that the talent level is lower, where Wisconsin's actually probably the more talented team, even at the skill positions, and it's starting to show.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And in the trenches, Slim Lewis says the key with this offense and Locke is enough time in the pocket to let plays develop and for receivers to get into space. It all comes down to the offensive line. What an amazing day once again. Gosh, in the rewatch, it's just so, he literally is just camping out in the pocket back there. It's so nice to see. And I mean, all the way across the board, Nelson and Huber and Brunner and Renfro and Mallman, they're fantastic. I mean, even Kevin Haywood came in there yesterday, had one tough play, but he needs to learn from it anyway. But man, he looks like a man out there. It's just, we've got some fantastic offensive linemen, and it's really, really exciting to see. Let's talk about the defense. I'm going to throw up the snap count percentages that I had on there for last week. So I added a column there, and I'll ask you to just kind of, Justin, give me some thoughts on what sticks out here. Quickly, I did highlight, for those that are listening to this on a podcast, a few players. Elijah Hills is now, again, 43% of the snaps. He's been in. Brandon Lane is slowly working his way up. Now he's at 27% of the snaps. And then you see some players like K. McDonald and are going down. Alliegro at 36%, which is good. He's steadily on the rise. Tackett Curtis only had 18% of the snaps yesterday, which was a little bit surprising. You can see that
he's a little banged up, or if he had a bad game in there.
Yeah, I mean, and then I also want to point out that Xavier Lucas is another one that to really look at this line. I'm going to read this entire thing off. So in the 6 weeks that Xavier Lucas has played with us, 13% in week 1, then he played up to 50% in week 2, 23, 26, 55, 57. So he's at 57% of the snaps. Is Xavier Lucas. Really good stuff. Anything jump out on here, Justin?
Yeah, I think in pass rush downs, looking at this, Sebastian Cheeks needs to be out there a little bit more. 13% is just not enough. I would like to see him out there as a designated pass rusher, almost just because he's one of the few guys that actually has some burst. Like, we're really hurting for guys that can really push the edge and kind of get in there. Now, Peterson looked pretty good in this game. I actually thought he was better against the run than in the past. But there were times in this game where we just weren't getting enough pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point there, and I'm glad you said that. When you look at this graphic here, Daryl Peterson and Leon Lowry, 76 and 57% respectively, and then Witt had 30%. Obviously, he's more of a rushing kind of a guy, stopper there, and Pius 27%, Cheeks 13. If you had a better balance, theoretically, your pass rush could be improved because you have fresher guys on the field. I think that is part of the thing where maybe we do need to really mix it up and bring in other guys to really keep the folks fresh out there, because pass rush is definitely a problem. And that's something that I'm actually going to turn to right now. I lost the comment here. Bill Welsh has only 1 sack though, and then he sent Justin a question. And I'm writing this up on the screen, but this is paraphrased. This is not exactly what Bill wrote. UW only has 10 sacks this season. Can Heiberger be someone that can help? And are we in trouble if we can't get pressure the rest of the way? That is a paraphrased question from Bill Welsh. Justin, what are your thoughts on the pass rush? Because it is, if you're going to find something with this defense, it's not working right now, it's the pass rush.
Yeah. Heiberger, I just don't know how far along he is since he's been back. Like, with him missing a lot of time, how long has he been actually getting consistent reps in practice? And are they pushing him to get reps at this point? I think part of it comes down to, I would like him to, if they feel like he's an upgrade at the pass rush position, I'd like him to be getting some opportunity come Penn State and Oregon, because you're going to need pass rush in those games. You're going to have to make the quarterback uncomfortable. And I don't feel super confident in what we have. Now, I like seeing Alliegro starting to move up, because he's the guy that I want to see. If you're going to attack up the middle, he's the guy I want to see doing that. Like, Chaney's I thought he had a pretty good game against Rutgers. I would like to see Alliegro get the opportunity to, in more pass rush situations, just turn him loose. Like,
he can play on the outside for those pass rush plays. There's no reason you can't bring him in and put him on the outside and play him in the pass rush. Not saying all the time. I'm not saying he needs to become an outside linebacker, but he could definitely be utilized more. There are situations where you can have Jake Chaney and Jaheim Thomas out there and Alliegro for a play or two situationally to see what he can do, to give him a run at it. Like, it's a good point. Our Bill Woj brought it up, and it's a fair point. Like, Alliegro is playing fantastic. Why not add him in there?
I'm curious if they just don't feel comfortable with his actual pass rush moves off the edge.
That could be because the athleticism is there. You would agree.
Yeah,
right?
He's definitely athletic enough, but being able to not only be able to bend the edge, but does he have a counter is something that he might not have. He might be more adept at just coming through up the gut, which that works too. Which is why I think they need to stay fresh on the interior too. I mean, those guys, absolutely, Chaney and Jaheim Thomas haven't been much of a pass rush threat themselves. So I don't have a problem with Alliegro coming in on third down and saying, just go out there and sick them.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously it's not going to hurt to try these things, especially in a game like Northwestern, when we should have hopefully a situation where we can experiment with a few things. Is it crazy, Justin, to say that Wisconsin's got a pretty good defense right now? It went from a defense we did not trust. Remember the reaction shows and the podcast that you and I did early in the season when you talked about the run defense just isn't good enough. Nothing's just really good enough there. I feel like they've taken big steps, especially in the run defense.
They do. This was a very good rushing Rutgers team, and they shut them down. And people can say whatever they want about this. They really didn't get any yardage until we were up, 28-0? 28-7? Yeah, I would know.
Yeah,
28-0? Yeah, it was 28.
Honestly, when it was 21-0, they had like 10 yards. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, he was exceptional, or they were exceptional at keeping him in check. And I think he picked up 30 yards on that one drive where they scored the touchdown. Other than that, he really did nothing. And this is a guy who is, I think he was top 5 in the country in rushing. So they're good enough. Like, I feel confident with this defense against everyone but Penn State and Oregon, because if they can gear up to stop one thing, I think they're going to be really good at it. Those two teams, they can't do that against as much. Even Iowa, nobody's afraid of McNamara. Like, he's a slightly better version of Kaliakmanis. So I look at it like, man, if you can go out there and take away the run game from a lot of these teams, they're not going to be able to do much.
Yeah, the defense in general deserves a ton of credit. Obviously, Locke is the story, right? And Walker, there's a lot of guys offensively that are the story, but this defense has given up 13 points in 2 weeks. Purdue scored 43 in regulation yesterday against Illinois in a game that I was really too bad they couldn't upset Brett Bielema. But I mean, that, like you see what these teams are doing in other games they're playing, and then when they play us, like I know it was just Rutgers and Purdue, but 13 points in 2 weeks is fantastic. We talk about the offense playing with a lot of confidence. The defense is playing with a lot of confidence too. And you can see the swagger that they're playing with out there, the speed, the like ferocity. I mean, Elijah Hills is bringing such good push on the D line. It's instantly, I mean, not instantly, but it's really made the D line better. It's become a D line that I'm not saying we trust it. It's because it's like, and it's a great D line, but it went from an area of major concern to an area that I'm still thinking about, and it's still a concern. But now we've got guys that I feel like can make plays. Elijah Hills can make plays there. It's not just about
Brandon Lane had a good game.
Absolutely. I mean, Brandon Lane
finally getting comfortable enough and making enough plays that they're comfortable with him out there.
Yeah. And it's fine if you have less snaps for Kurt Neal and Ben Barton, and that's fine because they have their plays too. But again, it keeps it more fresh. It's nice to have that sort of depth and on that D line and the ability to move people in and out, which is fantastic.
Bill Woj, I'm just going to say this, Raiola, with time, I have less than zero fear of him. If we can stop the run for Nebraska, he's not a good enough quarterback yet to take over a game against us if they have no run threat. They have to be balanced against us.
We're going to have to put pressure on him, though. He is a good quarterback when he's not pressured, and we've seen that.
He's not with no running game, though. When you can just sit there and be like, all right, we're going to sit in zone or do whatever with him, they're not good. They're not dynamic enough at the receiver position for him to just sit back there and pick a team apart. They have to be able to have some deception in order to be able to make their offense work, which is why they've been going downhill as they've seen better defenses now.
Nebraska has not been good apart. I agree. He's not going to pick people apart, but I think Dylan Raiola is a good talent. I think he is a very talented.
I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in a couple of years. I just don't think he's there yet.
But I just feel like if we don't put pressure on him, and we're not, and I hope by the time we get to that game, we really have improved and we can. He will find spots that will hurt us. It's just, I mean, to me, it's almost like. It's crazy to think that he's not going to do that. Like, we're going to Lincoln. He is going to find spots to hurt us. I'm not saying we're going to lose that game. Well, maybe, but
did you see his stats against Rutgers?
What?
You see his stats against Rutgers?
I mean, his stats were horrendous against Rutgers, but that could be an outlier game. Like, he's had decent games this year. Like, it's not like we've only seen him play one game.
I'm just saying, as teams get more footage on him, he's trending poorly.
Yeah,
because they're starting to get a feel for what he does.
And that's fine. I would love to obviously beat the crap out of Nebraska. No problem with that there. One last question before we move on to our superlatives and our confidence ratings, Justin. Going back to the offense, 2 weeks ago, we were pretty much 100% secured on the fact that Phil Longo wasn't going to be here at the end of the season and into next year. Are you now seeing a world where he stays as the offensive coordinator based on what you've seen and how it will progress the next few weeks, the rest of the season? Do you feel like it's opening up enough that you're like, oh, I can kind of see how this works and how still keeping the power run game is associated with that? Do you think he can be here next year? Because a couple weeks ago, we both were saying no chance.
I think well, for me, it was never the fact that he's not a good offensive coordinator. It was whether or not him and
it was
Fickell
good for
here
on
the same page. Yeah. And if they can find common ground on what's going on, and clearly the last couple of weeks, I don't think either one of them has hated how this has played out. I feel confident that they can coexist and we can be really good offensively. The question will be, is this what we're seeing now, what Fickell wants to see? And I have a hard time believing he does.
I mean, yeah.
And I think that they probably will. And I think that he's taken a lot of flack, but people worry that he's just might be over it. I'll be honest with you. He took a lot of flack when he was at UNC too. Like, people, for whatever reason, he was the scapegoat. One thing I want to point out here, like everyone talked about him being the problem at North Carolina. Guess what? The games that he was scoring super fast, the defense wasn't holding people to 7 points and 6 points. They were giving up 30 plus because their defense stunk. And it would get pinned on him. And it's like, it's not his fault that the defense just isn't doing anything right. Wisconsin has a better defense. We have a better culture for defense than what North Carolina, I think, ever has in the time that I can remember watching them in football. So I think that they can be good. And it's a balance. I will say when we played USC, I was not super happy with his play calling in the first half simply because we were playing well, but you could tell that the defense was getting gassed. And it was because the defense was out there. They couldn't stop them. That had less to do with the offense doing anything wrong, and more to do with the fact that they needed a drive from the offense where the offense just held onto the football for a while to give them some time to recover. And we weren't doing that. But that was because the defense wasn't getting stops. They would get to 3rd and long, and then they would cough up a first down, and they would end up being on the field for 5 or 6 minutes straight because they couldn't get stops.
So the two things I would say about Longo are, he's got to do it in the big games too, right? And we've got to see it against Penn State. We got to see it against Iowa. I mean, Iowa certainly is a game that I think is on our schedule where you're like, we can win that game. You're not playing a top 5 team with the other couple, but I do believe that there is a world where he stays if he can do that. And also you have to remember now that as every week goes by and we're liking Braedyn Locke more and more, if Longo leaves, Locke is probably gone. So there's that element of it as well. And we don't really want to be starting over. I think what's really interesting now is, we were talking about whether we would need another transfer quarterback next year. I mean, Braedyn Locke is doing a heck of a job auditioning for this job next year, and we may not need that, and we can have more development from Mabry.
I think the bigger question with him is going to come down to, I hate to keep banging the drum on the Penn State and Oregon games. It's going to be how functional he can be against better competition.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Fickell isn't in this to beat up on the kind of dregs of the Big Ten. He realizes he's going to have to step it up.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to get them to the point where they can beat some of those teams. And it doesn't have to be all of them. He just needs to look good. If we next year's schedule, we're going to probably have 4 big games again. If he can win 2 of those, that's a great season for him. How long has it been since we've had a quarterback that could go out and take down a good team? I don't even know if we've had one since Russell Wilson.
I mean, yeah, the big games are everything. And like I said that too, we have to do well in that game. And but you know what? We can just really enjoy what we have right now, and we'll see what happens against Penn State, but there's so much to be happy about, even if something doesn't happen in the Penn State game. Let's do some superlatives and talk through some specifics in the game. And then we're going to look ahead and do our confidence ratings for the rest of the season. So we'll start, Justin, with the play of the day. I'll kick this one off. To me, it's honestly the Vinny Anthony throws, both of them. I mean, really, they were just dimes. And Vinny Anthony is quickly becoming one of the best weapons we have on this team. Now, we talked about it early in the season. We're like, hey, throw it downfield to Vinny Anthony, get him downfield. And we're doing that. And the incredible throws that Braedyn Locke is making. And I rewatched both of those plays 3 times. I kept rewinding it because I was like, from when the camera puts on to Vinny Anthony, he's not breaking stride at all. He virtually is making 0 adjustments to the ball. It's very, very impressive. And the fact that we had on pretty much back-to-back drives, those 2 plays, one was actually the first drive, and then the second one was to go up 21. I mean, 3 weeks ago, in the first 2 games of the season, the Alabama game, the USC game, we were talking about why Longo isn't doing that more. He did it in the USC game, but to do it twice in the first 3 drives, incredible. And that's exactly what we want to see from the Longo offense. It will open things up for the running game. We'll keep obviously stretching the field a lot more and opening up plays and opening up many more lanes for other receivers and our slot guys who are obviously getting a lot of targets. But both of those plays are the plays of the day. I just think it's amazing how well Vinny Anthony is working in this system and how effective and efficient he's being.
I'm going to say, those 2 plays, but there's 2 more for me, and they're all passes. The other 2 are the pass that Trech made, or that caught where he came back and stole it away from the defensive back. And then the other one was when Locke threw the ball to CJ Williams and was kind of fading away and threw it when he was about to get hit. That picked up a first down. Mm-hmm. These are plays that this offense hasn't been making all season long. And for honestly, for a very long time, we haven't really had that type of play. Guys are making plays now, and that makes all the difference in the world. And guys are getting more confident. And that's one of the reasons why coming into this Northwestern game, I've had people say, well, it's a house of horrors and everything that goes wrong with it. I'm like, the problem is you have a bunch of young guys that are on Wisconsin still that are still fighting for their position. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're going to have guys that are coming in that are going to be lax. These guys are trying to do everything right every single play because they don't have settled in jobs. Trech isn't a lock to keep playing all the time. So he's got to keep making plays. You have running backs that need to. Yakimelli's going to have to keep making plays. You have Vinny Anthony, who probably doesn't, but he's still kind of having his coming out party. Like, I don't think he's had enough catches yet that you can look at him and that he has a right to get an ego because he's getting a couple catches a game. Now, he goes out there and has like a 6 catch for 150-yard game, then things change. But he's been really good, but he hasn't had that game yet where he's taken over. And that's why I think where some of these guys that you just don't have that. I feel like you have guys fall back a lot more when you have a team that's experienced and older and maybe is feeling themselves a little bit. I don't know if Wisconsin these guys have enough of that experience yet to feel that way.
It's a good point. I mean, they're going to keep fighting, and it's a good time to do that when we need it. We need to get that victory. Bill Woe says, I love the snap from center, line up in the power eye, 9-yard rush around left end. That was nice. It was good to see the I formation back. Will Hannah says, I think the pass to Pauling. I know Pauling made a really nice adjustment, but Locke threw it exactly where it had to be thrown. Yeah, I mean, that was a really good pass as well. It was definitely in a situation where it would have been caught had Pauling not made a perfect adjustment. But you're right. It was in a place where really only he could get it. Now, the cornerback, if he turned around, he could have actually, got in there. It was a little bit short and off to the right, but a great throw and a great play overall. Justin, next, you knew it was over when what?
When we got up 14-0.
Yeah.
Rutgers is not a team that can fight back in a game like this. And I felt like the way the offense was clicking, we were going to score more. Like, I would have been shocked if we didn't put more touchdowns on the board. And the way the defense was making Rutgers look completely inept, it's like they're not going to challenge us. Like, they might get a score. And I said that somebody asked at halftime if I thought that this was going to be a shutout. And I'm like, worst case, it's going to come to the point where we have our backups in and they're going to give something up because we're just not that far along yet. We're not a well-oiled machine where like the backups are so much better than everyone else. We have a ton of young guys that are coming in. They're not like, red shirt sophomores that are coming in that have 3 years in the program and are pretty polished already. We have a bunch of true freshmen that are coming out there.
Yeah. For me, it was actually when it was 14-0, but then Walker had that long run and then the long pass to Vinny to put it on the 2-yard line. At that point, I mean, our offense was absolutely rolling 21-0. That was the end. Biggest surprise. Who surprised you in a good way?
I think Tawee. I wasn't expecting this type of game. I figured he could get to 100 again, but I wasn't expecting 200. I mean, the 55-yard touchdown run, that surprised me. I'll give him all his flowers on that one, but man, Tawee, that you're waiting for that gear to come back. I can tell you that.
For me, it's actually Braedyn Locke. I knew that he had it in him, obviously, after last week, but I just think that like to do it 2 weeks in a row and to really thread the ball in certain situations, and for sure. I got to give it to him. I just think he had a great game and he really surprised me. Biggest disappointment for me, it's Will Pauling. He had another drop, but obviously he's hurt, and I hope it's not a head injury. I don't know what the injury is. It's an upper body thing, but hopefully he's healthy. But I think in general, and this is almost like this game and also kind of the season, I'm disappointed in the fact that he has not been an all-star kind of a stud receiver that we had last year. Now we're making up for it, and that's fine. But in an offense that's rolling right now, it's kind of hard to pick out something that's not working, and that to me is the one that's not. Now again, he had that great catch in the end zone. He's still one of our top guys. It's not really about him being disappointing. It's him not being a 10. Now he's an 8, right?
He's been underwhelming based off of what we saw last year. He's been less consistent.
That's well said. Yeah. What's yours? Is yours Pauling?
I think the lack of pass rush in this game is still getting to me a little bit. Like, I thought we were starting to make some strides with that. And I would say the inability to corral the QB run a little bit. because I think teams are going to see that factor, and it could sting us a little bit coming up, because he had 60 yards, something like that, probably 50 yards against us, just off of stupid QB runs where he just ran around the edge and picked up, 15 yards.
Those are the muff punts. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, that one we can just lock in on a weekly basis, because for whatever reason we just can't punt return. They need to pick somebody and just let them grow.
I mean, I feel like they have with Henry. He was just hurt. So I think they're pretty much Henry is the guy. But I think, Wohler did an admirable job back there. And we're not used to seeing safeties back there, other than, of course, the best punt returner we've ever had, and Mr. Jim Leonard. But, I agree. I just think it's a silly problem to have, guys. Like, we can't do this. It's just not going to be, it's going to bite us at a really bad time, and we need to do it. We need to fix it now. Next one, coaching MVP, Justin. So who had their unit the most prepared? Who's your coaching MVP? Anyone but Fickell.
I think I just have to go both coordinators. They had a really good week. I can argue, we're nitpicking on most of these things here. I can't really, I know we didn't have a great pass rush. We gave up 7 points and less than 300 yards. It's hard for me to really, have a problem in this. And most of that yardage they picked up was after the game was done. So it's hard for me to really look at this and say, you guys didn't have an exceptional week. Like both sides of the ball were really good in this game. I'm
going to give this to Whitlow, because the run defense and the run stopping and that D-line, we don't give them a ton of credit when because for obvious reasons, and the pass rush is an issue, but man, I know that some people disagree with me, and that's fine, but I think Monangai's a really good running back. Like the numbers were there before he played us. He's fantastic. And we shut him down, and that D-line deserves a lot of credit for what they did. So I'm going to give it to Whitlow, because that was a tough ask, right? I mean, now their offensive line had some injuries, which helped us, but stopping Monangai was fantastic, and they did a great job with it. Your defensive MVP, Justin.
That's a good one. There were a lot of guys that I thought played pretty well in this game.
I'll go first while you're thinking about it. I'm going to go Zachman, just because I think I know that he had that one missed tackle, but that's just going to happen. I think Zachman played with a lot of heart, effort. I mean, both the safeties always play well, but it's often that Wohler's the guy and Zachman's kind of the next guy down. But Zachman this year has taken on a bigger role than I think any of us really thought he was going to have. And he's playing nearly 100% of the snaps every game. And yeah, he led the team in tackles yesterday. He had a 1.5 tackles for loss. Zachman just had a great game. And if he continues like that, and now all of a sudden, I mean, not that we already loved our secondary, but to have Zachman playing really well and literally across the back four there, they're playing great football.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's him. I mean, he had the only turnover that we had. Yep. I will say this. I thought the secondary as a whole played well in this game. And I will also say, I thought Alliegro was really good. Alliegro and Cheney both had pretty good games from the linebacker position. And yeah, defensive line, somebody just threw up Hills. Hills had another game where he had a couple of stops on really big situations where he darted through and made a play. And that's something that this team is going to need the rest of the season. And he's shown that he can do it against every team. It's not just, beating up on our weaker teams on our schedule. So he's going to be a big deal the rest of the season.
Who's your game ball going to, Justin?
I think it's got to be Tawee Walker. 3 touchdowns, 198 yards, 201 all-purpose yards. Hard not to give it to a guy that has that kind of game.
Yeah, you can really give it to so many people. I'm gonna go back to the offensive line. I just feel like the offensive line is literally the engine up there. They are winning so many battles. They're just playing incredible football. And without those guys, we're nowhere. The fact that we put up 94 points, yes, has a lot to do with Braedyn, Locke, Tawee Walker, Trech, Kekahuna, Vinny Anthony. There's an endless list of guys, but those 5 guys up front are leading the charge, and they're going to get my game ball. It's freaking fantastic to watch this and realize that last year we were just so pissed off all the time because the line wasn't playing as well as they should have. And what we're seeing now is a Wisconsin offensive line, and it's amazing to watch. All right, Justin, let's do some confidence stuff. This will be a little fun. Our confidence is obviously at an all-time high. We're halfway through the season now officially, right? 6 games in the books. We're 4-2. By the way, we are completely on schedule with the number of wins that I actually thought we'd have right now, because I thought originally I picked us to lose to Rutgers. So the point is that there is an opportunity for us to still get to the records that we both predicted. You predicted 9-3. I predicted 8-4. 9-3 is probably a bit of a stretch here, but so let's just talk, Justin, game by game and go through and put your comments here in the notes. If you're listening to us live, would love to I'm going to put up your comments as well. Every game, I want you to give me a percentage of how confident you are that we're going to win that game. Okay. Now that's obviously changed a lot, because if you asked us this 2 weeks ago,
it's changed.
Those numbers are
changed.
changed.
This Rutgers game would be the one that was the tipping point.
Absolutely.
Where you start to feel really good.
So we'll start with that Northwestern. This is a game, obviously, that's coming up next week. It is, I call like a little bit of like a banana peel type of a game for us that we can slip up. I don't think it's going to happen, because I think the confidence we're playing with and how Luke Fickell's got his guys going right now, it would be a huge shock if it didn't happen. But it is obviously next on the schedule, and it's the last game before our tough stretch. What is your percentage here for how confident you are that we win at Northwestern?
I'm at a 90% for this game, and I just think that we're just a better offensive team than them. I think we're better on both sides of the ball. Like, if we play poorly, they can certainly beat us, but like, I watched some of the plays that happen with their offense, and I'm like, some of the throws that their quarterback is slinging up, they're just not going to get away with against us. They can get away with against worse teams. And they're not a great offense. Like, Wisconsin's going to have to play poorly in that game in order for us to lose that game. It could certainly happen, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm at an 85%. Just that 5% difference for me is the fact that Northwestern is a bit of a house of horrors. I know that's silly, but it's just, we are. Hey, I'll tell you what, it's beautiful. It's right on the lake. That looks awesome. I would love to go to that game. But it's 85%. I think we should win. And it's obviously the one that I'm not scared of losing. I'm just honestly scared of us having the letdown, because like, as you all know by now, the week after Justin and I are going to be there. Ryan's going to be there. We're all coming up to Madison for the Penn State game. I want so badly to go into that game, as I've said, 5-2, and having all the optimism and all the confidence in the world going into that Penn State game. That will be an electric atmosphere, and the Camp Randall will be just bumping, especially if we don't drop the ball next weekend. All right, Penn State. So we're going to be at this game. What's your percentage for Penn State?
I'm going to say 50% right now.
Wow,
and I'm going to say that because of the fact if we have another good game, I don't think that they're world beaters. Like, Penn State has been. There's so many factors coming into this game, and I wouldn't, if we were on a neutral field, I wouldn't feel as good about it. I like the fact that it sounds like it's going to probably be a night game. We'll probably have a really strong crowd if we take care of business this next week at Northwestern, which I think we will. Say we win that one like 31-10 or something like that. I'd feel really good going into that game with how well we're playing on both sides of the ball. I keep hearing people tell me that Penn State can really run the football, and I'm like, no, they can't. The offensive line is pretty average. The running backs are good. If you let them get in space, they can absolutely hurt you. Wisconsin, but the offensive line is not going to be why. Like, they're not going to lean on you and take it away like Wisconsin's is right now. Wisconsin's offensive line is a hammer. They're basically just wearing people down and beating up on them. Penn State's not capable of that. But Penn State is a good enough offensive line that they can occasionally, if your defense isn't playing disciplined, get a guy an opening, and he can make something happen.
They also have a guy who, in his rookie season in the NFL, is going to be an all-pro, I feel like. Their tight end is fantastic. He looks like a man amongst boys. I mean, he really is. He's absolutely 100% an NFL tight end already. And so I actually asked Bill Wojastin here about who's going to cover him. I actually texted that to Ryan and Justin yesterday. I'm like, who are we going to cover on this guy? So it's probably going to be Wohler. Maybe it's you're going to probably bracket
him. I don't think they're going to be super afraid of any of the other receivers. So I think you're comfortable doubling him up and taking your chances with Hallman on somebody and Forkern on somebody else, because they're not overly dynamic at wide receiver. It's not like you're like Oregon. I have legitimate fears against them They have guys who can really run and get open in space.
I mean, they were getting wide open passes against Ohio State.
Yeah.
What the hell do you think they're going to do against
them? And that's what I'm saying. Like Penn State doesn't really have that on the perimeter. They're kind of limited on the edges. Like they're not substantially better than what we have at the wide receiver position. If you have good quality corners, they can keep those guys in check. That Warren is, on the other hand, is somebody you're going to have to put a lot of effort into.
So I'm 40% on Penn State. That's kind of where I'm at. I just feel like 50% is admirable. I'm obviously think that's great. And listen, if we win next week, my number's going up again. But for now, 40%. All right, at Iowa. This is an interesting one because this is that stretch, right, of Penn State, Iowa, Oregon. That's going to be very difficult. At Iowa, I'll go first here. I'm at a 50% on this. I just feel like it's a 50-50 toss-up game for me. Iowa's offense is better than it was last year. That's clear. You can watch. You can see they put up a ton of points over the weekend.
Too.
What?
Their defense is worse, though, too.
Fair. 100% fair. But so I think that, to me, that's a toss-up game. Look, winning at Kinnick is not an easy thing for anyone to do.
I agree with that.
It's certainly not easy for us.
Has that game time been listed yet?
No, it's not listed, at least that I haven't seen.
That could end up being a night game, too.
It could be.
If we somehow beat Penn State, there's a good chance that could end up being a night game.
I mean, if we beat Penn State, we're obviously going to be ranked. Matthew Anderson's 51%. Matt Van Grinson says Iowa's 60% against Iowa. So a lot of confidence here. I'm going 50. Where are you at for the Iowa game?
I'm 55. I think they're not. And this is one of those things, like I said earlier. If there's a team that we can gear up on defensively, and I look at it against Iowa, and I'm like, they run the football. If we can just make that the focal point of our defense, they're a lot easier for us to handle. Like, they don't have a dynamic pass catchers. They have a good tight end, but they don't really have the type of guys on the outside that are going to tax our secondary. We can take some risks and try to shut down the run. And if they can shut down the run, Wisconsin's going to have a good chance at being kind of doing what they did with Rutgers. Not win by that way, but being able to hold their run game in check, where we can just be like, okay, we're going to make you earn this. You're going to have to really continue to make drives or push drives down the field where you're getting 3rd and 5 and have to consistently, pick these up. And I think Wisconsin can force them into those situations.
I think every Iowa game is a 50-50 toss-up. I feel like I think that's
fair.
I mean, you go into any Iowa
game,
offense
is more dynamic than theirs.
And honestly, I know that, there's a lot of people that are here over 50%. Going to Iowa, I don't know how you can be over 50%. I just don't see it, because if it was in Camp Randall, I'd be at 55% too. To me, it's just really hard to imagine going into Kinnick Stadium and saying, it's 60% confident that we're going to win. I would love to be there. I'm just not there. Do I think we can win that game? Abso-freaking-lutely we can. But I feel like it's a toss-up for me right now based on what I'm seeing. But look, we're obviously gonna have 2 more games until that point, and we could really be feeling confident there. Oregon, where are you on Oregon? Which, by the way,
after watching that last game, no offense to the Badgers, I'm like at 25%. Like,
I'm surprised you're even that high.
It's at home. There's going to be some things that I think Oregon's not going to be as up for this game as they were against Ohio State. Like, that's just human nature. They are better, like talent level are better than what we have right now. And that's no slight to this team. We're building towards it. Oregon has been building that roster for a good long time. It's 2 different places. Like, if this was 2 years from now, I'd feel a lot better about it. We're not there yet roster-wise. It doesn't mean I think the game will be competitive. We will play good football against them, but I just don't think that we have the athletes yet to be able to really hold them down.
We played a lot of games against Ohio State. Obviously last year we were in the game with them. And where I'm going with this is that Ohio State's typically a team that crushes us. That game yesterday, I saw a team in Oregon that literally is going toe-to-toe, punch for punch with Ohio State the entire game. Now, Ohio State had a couple miscues, the whole onside kick nonsense. There were a couple things that you're like, really, like, it just didn't work out for Ohio State. But every single time Ohio State...
The squib missile?
Yeah. Every single time Ohio State took the lead, we're put in a position where you're thinking, okay, Ohio State's going to take over here. Oregon just kicked them right back in the mouth. I mean, I give Oregon a ton of credit for what they did yesterday. I'm at a 10% here. I just don't feel like it's a game where
I don't think that you and I think we have the same perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like you got to get your wins against Iowa, Nebraska, Oregon's not the team. Dylan Gabriel is a next level quarterback. They've got next level guys all over the field. And I just think if Ohio State struggles to stop them, I mean, I'm just being honest. I just don't really feel like we're that team that can do it. Now, again, hey, if we beat Penn State and then maybe we're talking about something else, but as it sits right now, I just don't see any real chance.
Do you think that Ohio State teams are soft now that Urban's not there anymore? They really seem to struggle in these games where teams can go toe to toe with them.
They are 100%. I mean, this is a big question. And I'm going to be, I want to talk to some Ohio State guys about this because, man, I saw a thing on Twitter today where it's like they're 1-7 against the top 5 teams or whatever it is. They obviously they've lost to Michigan a few years in a row. They are really losing these big games. So I think it's a very good question. I wouldn't say they're really soft because I think they're exceptionally better than so many more teams. But I just think Ryan Day isn't a guy that can coach against those guys. Like I feel like when you put Ryan Day against the rest of the Big Ten, he's dominating us because they have the athletes. It's not Ryan Day, it's the Ohio State athletes that they have. Mm-hmm. But when Ryan Day's athletes are going up against athletes that match theirs, Ryan Day gets out coached. That's kind of my perspective on Ohio State. I feel like they're way better than us because they've got the better players. I don't think Ryan Day is the coach, which is why I've often feared that they'll come after Luke Fickell at some point. But he's not the guy. That's just where I am on Ohio State. Mm-hmm. All right, Nebraska. At Nebraska, a few weeks ago, obviously things were looking like Nebraska was going to have a really good year. We both picked this to be a win preseason. Where are you at on Nebraska right now? Percentage.
I'm going to say 65%. I think we can. I don't think they can run the football. And if we can just gear up to stop the pass, and the strength of our defense is our pass defense, I feel really good about that game.
Yeah, I like where your head's at. I'm at 65 as well. I just think the last 2 weeks have really showed me that we can. I was just worried that Raiola was going to, because we weren't going to put pressure on him, he was going to crush us. And I think that while I still think we need to put pressure on him, they don't have the team around him yet. Mm-hmm. They're just not there. They're not there in the trenches. I mean, they beat Rutgers 14-7.
Like, it's a worse offensive line than we just saw with Rutgers.
Yeah, they went to Purdue and struggled for a half. Like they haven't really looked good the last few weeks, and it's making me realize that they don't have the players around him yet to really do anything. I'm also at a 65%. I feel like that's kind of how that's one of those games where we feel like, we thought we'd win, then we thought we would lose. Now we definitely think we're going to win. All right. Finish it off with the Golden Gophers. I'm at a 95% just because I want to be, because I hate Minnesota. And I was really pissed off to see them beat UCLA last night. I really just hate that seeing Luke PJ Flex.
His antics drive me nuts. He's such an ass on the sidelines that it's like, I have so little respect for them.
And I have to say this, because I know there's been a lot of talk on Twitter here and there, Fickell's got the team vest. Let me tell you something. It's a vest. It's not something that gets talked about every single interview. He doesn't have all these cringy moments.
I haven't heard him ever say it. Have you?
What?
I don't think I've ever heard him use the acronym.
No, it's just so, but people often say, well, you give Flex shit because of that, but you don't say anything about the vest. I'm like, the vest is just a vest. It's every single thing PJ Flex says is cringe worthy, everything. And it's just driving me crazy.
I heard him say, we've been rolling the boat. I heard him say it 3 times against UCLA. That's a bad UCLA team that you almost blew the game against.
God, they could have absolutely lost to USC and UCLA, and it really pisses me off that they didn't. I mean, obviously, but yeah. So were you at a 90% or plus, or where are you at on this one?
I'm not that high. I think I'd probably be around 80.
Okay.
But I feel really I'll be shocked if we lose that game. I think we're better offensively. We're better in the trenches than they are. I think that we will run on them, and I don't know if they're good enough passing the football to run on us. And if we saw that kind of with UCLA was able to stop their run game. They run blitzed a lot, made it really hard for them to be able to run the football, and it killed their offense. Look at it this way. We're averaging 30 points a game now, and I think we feel like we're trending in that direction to consistently do that. Minnesota's down like around 20.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a significant difference in terms of offensive efficiency of what's going on between these two teams. They would need some stupid things to play in their favor. And Fickell and Fleck is not a good, like he's not some type of ingenious offensive mind. Neither is his offensive coordinator, where you look at it and you're like, oh man, they may really just scheme some things up and get us. He wants to run the football, and he's actually pretty conservative, which plays in our favor too.
Yeah. So Justin, looking back at what we just did, so you had Northwestern, Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota as all over 50%, and you had 3 of them pretty well locked in. So do you think we get to 8 wins? I mean, that we're at 4 wins right now, and you just have 4 wins that you think we're going to get.
If we play clean football, I think we're getting 8. We're getting 8-4. If we have a game where we just don't look out of sorts and don't look like ourselves, we can absolutely lose a game, because like we need to see this consistently week in and week out. But the thing is, the team seems pretty locked in right now. They just have to carry it out the rest of the season.
Yeah, and we can't have that slip up where we lose to a team that we're not supposed to, Yeah. I mean, I think that our slip up was USC. Like we slipped up. We had that game and we slipped up in the second half. And I just think that's always what scares me about Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota. It's like, are we going to go 3-0 in those games? I mean, we should, but we might not. And that's what scares me. And that's why I always think we'll drop one of those, and then we'll also win one of the ones we're not supposed to. I still think we're a 7. But listen, there's definitely a path to 8 wins here, and we just laid it out, right? I mean, Northwestern, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. That doesn't even count Penn State. Penn State is still a game that could get you another one. So, like, if we can beat Penn State, then we can definitely get to 8 wins, because
my 9-3 is still in play.
Your 9-3 is still in play. It's crazy to think about that after what happened against USC, and we're backup quarterback. Ches Malusi leaves the program. Like all these things are just kind of swirling the program. Everyone's thinking, "Oh man, Wisconsin's really down." Like the fact that 9-3 is, frankly, legitimately still on the table here is pretty crazy. And I mean, it's kind of like the ceiling now is, maybe is the ceiling 9? Is the ceiling 10? Like who? Probably 9. 9 is like the ceiling
9.
Right
we're not beating Oregon.
We're not beating Oregon, but we could beat Penn State and Iowa theoretically. But I don't think it's going to happen. So 9. But even that, it's nice to see that after a couple weeks ago, the ceiling was 7. So the answer to the question is yes, I think we absolutely can be an 8-win team. Whether we get there or not, we'll see. But the fact that we're even talking about 8 wins, Justin, when we were talking about, man, are we going to go to a bowl game this year? That was a conversation that Badger fans were having all over. You and I were having that conversation. And that's scary to think about that. But now look at where we are. It's pretty exciting stuff there. All right, we'll close the show there. I love the confidence stuff. We'll have to do that again. We were going to talk a little bit about the Big Ten, but we kind of already touched on everything. Illinois, I can't believe what happened with Illinois Purdue, by the way. Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Purdue, like we beat them 52-6.
Taking your foot off the gas.
And then Illinois rises in the rankings. Like, stop it. Like they did take the foot off the gas. But here's the thing.
Ridiculous.
They knew like Purdue was coming back, and they still they couldn't stop Purdue.
Yeah.
They think about that. They couldn't stop Purdue. That is a crazy statement that happened in the Illinois game. Justin, final thoughts before we close the show.
We're seeing exactly what we wanted to see since this season started, which was growth from this team and start to look like what we expected when Luke Fickell came in. And I think one of the perks to this is we're coming down the stretch. This is a super important season for Wisconsin to prove to recruits heading forward that we're building something here. The wide receiver position in the 2026 class, if Braedyn Locke can continue to light it up, is going to be huge for us. It's going to be such a huge opportunity to have these kids see, if we somehow do go 9-3 and then maybe win our bowl game, that's a chance to go 10-3 and be able to sell to recruits. Look what we're doing. We're still building here, and we're already able to get to this point. And now you can sell the wide receivers. Hey, you can come here. We can get you 700-800 yards receiving. We can get you 9 touchdown catches. You're going to be able to be under the spotlight playing against the best teams in the country. And Wisconsin can give you that opportunity. And guess what? You don't have to fight for it against 5 other guys like you do at Ohio State. You come here, you can be one of the first guys in. So you're going to get that opportunity because you're a different level player than what we normally get.
This season was looking like it could have taken a really bad turn. And instead it's taken 2 consecutive 40 burgers with a 150 burger in there. I can't believe after all the offensive chatter that we had, after everything we talked about with our offense and what was going on, we just scored 94 points in 2 weeks. 94 points in 2 weeks. 40.
That was like half our season last year.
It's absolutely amazing. And and long may it continue. That's all I'll say. Long may it continue. With that, thanks again for joining us. Thank you all that listen to this every single week. We'll be back again midweek to talk about our Northwestern game. And of course, again, next weekend on Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.